Hello everybody, how are you going? And welcome to why Australia's housing crisis is a warning for the world. Now obviously I'm sure that there are plenty of people that are painfully aware of the fact that there are a few things that are changing at the moment, but on most graphs or on plenty of graphs, Australia is definitely towards the top.
Apparently 100 years ago, there were witches that actually lived here, but that hasn't stopped it from being one of the most popular houses on the market this year.
There's a huge hole as you walk in the front of the house. We've put a bit of plyboard there, but we're still recommending that people step over that if they can. Some of these houses, they're in such bad condition that we have to actually get people to sign waivers just so they understand what they're walking into.
Wow.
We've had over 1,000 inquiries online. We've shown about 60 people through the home, sent out 30 contracts. With the market feedback been anywhere 1.3 and 1.4 million. So it just makes it a really great raw site for someone looking to renovate.
There it is, and that is the entire world problem summed up in one foul swoop, isn't it? Just thousands of inquiries, up to 30 contracts sent out, and still looking for this, for what we've just looked at, in burnt out, in rubble, in we have to sign a waiver in because there's a hole in the front of the front door, and all of that. Still looking at 1.6 million. Now obviously there are some things, and maybe if we come back to the very start, if I want to try and find this what would it be called? I don't know if everyone calls it the same, but the road sign, the sign on the front of the building, because that is what I wanted to know. How many beds, how many baths, and also the square meterage. So it's a 6-bed, 3.5 baths, 1 car perhaps, and 265 square meters. So what is that, like 1,000 foot, or I don't know what it would be. Regardless, it's not massive. It's still a block, it's still a terrace, but it's nothing huge, and it is just, I'm guessing, in the inner west somewhere, and still selling. With all of that included, being a renovator's delight, I'm sure is how they've marketed it. It's somewhere in there. 1.6 million.
Kevin, do you want to look inside here as well? Yep.
For them, lucky.
Very lucky.
Yeah.
Here we go. Take notes, everyone.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're here to sell. So we open the bidding, ladies and gentlemen, at 1,100,000. I thank you for that,
Whoa,
sir.
well under
1.5.
reserve.
At 1,600,000 I have. Wholesaling at 1,918,000. Sold, sir. Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great afternoon.
Alarms are going off.
1.918, well over what they were expecting. I mean, they started at 1.1, super under reserve, I guess, just to get all of those people going. And I guess there was they send out 30 contracts, but there was a decent amount of people there, be it neighbors and everyone alike. But to be selling that for 1.92, basically $2 million for not even a bare block of land. Like, you cannot do anything with it in its current form. It's not rentable in its current form. It's not livable in its current form. And so all of the kind of investment things that is going to be a lot of where this money is coming from, it still requires more money. Like, it probably requires almost $3 million just to be making it livable. But then they could probably sell it for 3.5. I don't know, something ridiculous.
Wholesaling at 1,918,000.
Crazy. I would love to know exactly where that is.
Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, have a
Next
great
door doesn't look
afternoon.
too
Alarms are
sneaky
going
about.
off in Sydney,
where
known
that
as
is.
Australia's bellwether property market. The coastal city ranks as the second least affordable housing market in the world among
There it is.
94 major cities.
Hong Kong.
This rush is very overwhelming.
There's not enough supply and there's too much demand.
I've been selling in the area for the last 18 years. The Sydney market is the strongest in Australia, and that has to do with the beaches, the accessibility to the city, airports. It's a fantastic location with a huge lifestyle scene, and I think it's the highest growing population out of all the Australian cities, and that's always going to cause prices to go up when land and homes are scarce.
I guess I generally agree with what he just said. I mean, it's fairly common knowledge that supply and demand is going to determine the price of any commodity, good, or anything like that. However, I'm fairly sure that it's actually Melbourne that is the highest growing either percentage or just raw population city out of all of the cities in Australia. However, when you see that view, just this little postcard stamp that we've got right here, you can understand why it still has kind of that upper echelon that, I mean, Melbourne can try, and they have been for quite some time, but they don't have that same kind of picturesque classic worldwide known thing. Like Melbourne constantly ranks as a fantastic city on most livable cities and all those kind of things, but they don't have that kind of postcard element that Sydney has in the form of the harbour and the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have the same. They don't have the beaches. They don't really provide the classic Australian, international or domestic mindset. And I think that severely plays into, I guess, the overall prices of so many things. I mean, even just coming back to, like they were saying, it is one of the fastest, or what do they say? The second least affordable places in the world. I guess it's 13.3 average incomes compared to Hong Kong's 18.8. But look at that, Sydney comes in second and then Vancouver comes in third. Very, very renowned places for certain lifestyles, certain things that people want to be moving there for, but not many people can actually afford it. And that is where the entire problem comes, because people don't want to be living out in Lithgow when they want that beach Sydney hotspot lifestyle. Scanning the rest of that list though, I'm very, very surprised that Honolulu, out of everyone, especially compared to all the other big name players on that list, is fourth. I mean, I don't know what I had in mind, but it never would have been Honolulu to be the world's least affordable cities list.
The toughest market I'm finding for buyers are the low-income first-home buyers, and they're often looking at one-bedroom or two-bedroom apartments, because you can imagine when rates go up from 2% to 6%, that's huge for someone who's on a single income salary, you know, looking to buy their first home.
Of course.
The predicament is mirrored globally, from the UK to Singapore, with little to no signs of relief. So what's driving this housing crunch? And what are the consequences for buyers, sellers, construction firms, and the government?
National home prices in Australia have risen 33% since the onset of the pandemic. At the same time, interest rates are markedly higher. Now, the reason why we're seeing that is the fact that we've got very tight conditions with respect to the supply of stock on market. We've also got the unemployment rate, which is sitting around a multi-decade low, adding an additional sense of security for home buyers. So we're continuing to see that housing demand has been bolstered by a very strong rebound in net migration.
Oh, it's all of that as well. I mean, obviously, as more and more people want to be living there because it's heralded as this great city, more and more people want to be living there because it just becomes heralded as this great city, whether that's because of the city or the country and the healthcare and the this and the that, whatever it may be. There are certain things that are going to entice certain people into certain areas, and that's also proximity to their home country, or perhaps even just chasing the weather, whether they like it hot, humid, cold, or wet, whatever it may be. That can play into a lot of people's decision making when they are looking to move completely abroad. You know, you have the UK, you have Canada, you have us. That's a massive triangle of difference right there. I was also a little bit taken aback when I saw this image right here, because that crane in particular had a fairly major collapse, and I was wondering when this video came out, and it came out a month ago. So I think between them filming this and releasing this, that entire crane collapsed, and I guess that is also going to be just compromising or contributing to the entire prices. I mean, I guess it is building the fish markets and there aren't going to be many people living there, but overall that crane eventually could have been building someone's house, whether that be a big house or little house, be a big block of apartments or not, and it's no longer in action. And look, obviously there are 1,001 different rates and numbers that they can be listing, whether it's the cash rate or the interest rate or the overall inflation and the pricing of houses, whatever it may be, they can rattle them all off. But the number that always sticks out is 30%, and let's call it 3 years. Like, I mean, I guess people are looking generally to double in 10, and so it's kind of in line with that, but it's still pretty insane that that 30% has come at the same time as so many other things, when people aren't able to find jobs, or they aren't able to get any kind of increases in their wages, or other things are getting so much more expensive, and so they're actually making less money.
The population of Greater Sydney is expected to grow by 1 million by 2041 to 6.1 million people. To cope with that influx, the state needs about 900,000 additional dwellings by then, according to government estimates.
Crazy.
But the tight supply of homes for sale isn't the only problem.
Yeah.
Rental markets in Australia are incredibly challenged at the moment. So we've got vacancy rates which are at or close to record lows in most capital cities Australia-wide. We've got very strong demand to rent, and that continues to outstrip the supply of available rentals.
Less than 1% of the country's rental properties are available for occupancy, which is the lowest among comparable markets globally. And the tight supply partly explains why rents for houses and apartments surged by 16% and 20% respectively in the past year alone.
Oh, man, that is a fairly sizable figure and a very scary one at the same time. I mean, I do want to be knowing, is that an average, is it a median, is it a what? As I know many people that have gone up more than 16%. Like I've said previously, I knew someone that went up 100%. That's just outrageous. And I don't think there is a particular cap on how much it can go up. I think it's only, once every contract or once a year? It's something along those lines. I don't think our legislation coincides perfectly with everyone else's, but still, 16%, there aren't many people that are going to be getting a 16%. Even on the low end of that two numbers, there aren't many people that are going to be getting a 16% pay rise year over year. That would be a seriously nice compounding amount of rises over a decade, but that just doesn't happen. And of course it doesn't. And so that's why things so quickly run away. I am now very curious though about what is some of the other vacancy percentages in these other countries. Even the fact that Hong Kong, even though they were well above us, 5 more median income, something like that, even having that, 50-ish% more average incomes, that's crazy that they are still going to be higher than Australia. And so that total supply thing, like, do they just have so many more high rises, or is it, I mean, it's not going to be less populated, and so how is everyone else coping so much more? I guess let's just take a tiny sample size from the USA. I know that they have so many more cities, and so as a state, or even as a mud map, if you look at where the entire population of Australia lives compared to the entire population of most other countries, I guess, you are going to be looking at the fact that they are a lot more spread out, more evenly spread out throughout the entire country, where every single person, 90 or 85, even 80% of Australians live in 5 places. And that's it. I mean, of course, that is because of the reasons I already said, whether it be the beach or the lifestyle or the healthcare or anything, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But it just makes people have not many options, and everyone wants to live in the same place. If they could live in Bondi or Point Piper, they could, and not everyone can. And I guess that's fine, but just to push people out to Lithgow, like I said, isn't very viable.
When we look at the affordability challenges that the housing market presents in Australia, we're seeing that it is the younger generation of Australians that are most impacted by these challenges, and also amongst those on lower income.
23-year-old Harry and his mother live on the outskirts of Sydney. Harry is a student and has a part-time job with a 2-hour commute each way. They're bearing the brunt of the housing crisis, having been left with no choice but to move from house to house to house.
The house we were in previously, I think we started renting it for $470 or $500 a week. It rose to $550. We just couldn't keep up with the cost. My mum is a Catholic primary school teacher. She's lived in the area for 20-something plus years, and she can't afford to live in the same area that she's lived in.
Harry says they were evicted from their rental house in 2022 when they asked for repairs to the shower.
And then suddenly we've just had to drop everything and spend all of our time looking for rental properties. Just inspection after inspection and afternoons spent going to inspections and applying for properties and not hearing anything back.
One of the inspections that we went to in a suburb nearby, we got there and there were around about 85 people, I think we counted. You don't really stand a chance when there's that many people who are going. That's the same with the pets. And it's kind of like, wow, let me do a resume for my dog.
That is a very, very common, but also very, very crazy story to be hearing. I mean, the figures that they listed weren't even that insane compared to some of the ones we've heard. They weren't anything that is remotely reasonable. I mean, I would love to know the time period that they were saying it went from 470 to 500 to 550, I believe it was, because if that was in a year, that's what? Over a 20% increase, or around 18% increase, whatever it is, it's definitely more than anyone's going to be getting a raise in that time. I mean, maybe if it was spread out over 10 years, if they said they started living there and they were renting it for 470 and then it ended up going to 550, more reasonable. That's completely, I think, in line with what most people have to deal with in a reasonable market, but that probably was just more so a year or 2 years or whatever it may be. And so for these people to suddenly have to be conjuring up $80, $90, $100 extra a week, that's a serious amount of money that a lot of people just can't afford, especially if you have just salaries. It's not like you can just pick up extra hours like these guys would. I mean, it's not a thing. You can't just really do that without working an entire another job. And if he's having a 2-hour commute each way, I really want to know where they are, because that's a long way. You can drive from a lot of places to the CBD in 2 hours. And of course, the other problem with that entire thing is the fact that if you are commuting 4 hours a day, that is a massive amount of time that you are spending in the car. Well, one, spending money on fuel, but also not being able to go, okay, I will pick up an extra shift, because you don't have the time. You're not just 5 minutes down the road and you go, yeah, I'll just duck into my part-time job here and then I'll go do my study over there. No, you're spending all your time at wherever you're going, at uni or at work, and then in the car, and that's it.
When they asked for repairs to the shower.
Oh, that right there just made me, I don't know what emotion it made me feel, but it made me laugh because it's just so ridiculous. It really is just outrageous that you can get evicted because you asked for repairs for the shower. It's probably just leaking, it probably was hot or too cold, whatever it may be, and they go, you're going to cost us money, get out. It's as simple as that. I don't want to be spending a single penny on you. Yes, it's my place and you are paying me, but to be having such disregard for your tenants, that's one thing. But then the people that don't even maintain their own property, so then eventually it's just in rack and ruin. That never makes any sense as well. It's such a inverted psychology. The entire thing makes no sense. If someone's paying you to live there, at least spend a little bit of money just maintaining it, if nothing else for selfish reasons, so then long term you don't have this giant $50,000 repair bill as the entire building falls over.
Hurdles remain for building more homes to ease the supply crunch. In the background are the construction collapses, with firms going bankrupt by the dozens. A pandemic-driven building boom is partly to blame. Construction firms had agreed to fixed-price contracts with lockdown homeowners looking to fix up their properties. But then the cost of labor and building materials spiked along with inflation.
Yes.
According to the Builders Collective of Australia, houses are now 30% more expensive to build than before the pandemic. For some, any kind of relief can't come soon enough.
And that is the problem, I guess, when the owner of the property has to be forking out 30% more to build a property that someone might have more prospects in buying, then of course the rental is also going to go up alongside that. So it's a hand-in-hand situation. And I feel as though out of a lot of countries, Australia is in a certain unique element where we don't have Europe to back us up in the UK's perspective, and we aren't the USA in terms of manufacturing and everything like that. Yes, we grow our own timber, but realistically, so much of what we get and use is imported, and the import fees just went through the roof. And so, of course, all of a sudden, if things start going up, then everyone needs to go up, and everyone's just chasing each other going up. It's like, oh, my labor's going up because the things are expensive, and so I need to be more expensive. Then the rent goes up, and then I guess eventually you just have this massive mushroom cloud storm of prices just getting pushed sky high very, very, very quickly. And I would love to know what places like New Zealand, and I guess maybe Ireland, I don't know if they have a certain backing from the UK or not, but are these smaller islands, not that Australia is a particularly small island, but independent islands, not directly backed up by small distance trade, are they more susceptible to increases compared to other countries? And that's why I guess Canada isn't particularly an island, but they don't manufacture as much, or yeah, there's so many things that could play into the economy, but in the end it doesn't particularly seem to matter, as Australia is quite so far hell-bent on riding that mushroom cloud to the ceiling, whether that be because of certain wars or certain tariffs or certain pandemics or anything like that. There are multiple things that go into that entire inflationary purpose, but it's still a thing that people have to live with day to day.
One way to help alleviate current challenges in the Australian housing market is also by incentivising or increasing the supply of social and affordable housing. For a portion of housing market participants that are so often overlooked and for whom it is crucial to be able to access stable and secure housing tenure.
Yes.
Across Australia, housing supply and housing affordability is a challenge. We are looking at opportunities to greater provide densification. We're looking at providing more planning pathways for different types of housing typologies. Firstly, increasing the social housing stock. Where you live, it's not just a roof over your head either. It's your community, it's where you build your family, it's where you build your networks, it's how you get to know people, it's your sense of self. We've recently received $610 million from the Commonwealth Government that will be directly put into social housing, and the government has a contribution they make to social housing in the millions, hundreds of millions each year, to make sure that we reinvest in both new and improved social housing stock.
At the moment, every single aspect of renting in this country is centred around profit. Home is such an indescribable, thing, but realistically, you might not even get the privilege to own your own home at all.
That is the sentence that we are hearing around the world, and I guess Sydney just happens to be the leading hand in this problem, and I guess can provide some level of warning to the world, but realistically, there's only so much time that everyone has. There's only so much leading ahead. Yes, we may be 0.2, 1, 3 ahead of wherever you may be, but realistically everyone's still feeling the same pressures. And like I was saying, it is a very indescribable thing, and they also said how it's incredible how people do create such a connection there, whether that be through work, the community, the local dog park, whatever it is, people do find home in not just the borders of their boundaries. They have further connections, whether that be the coffee shop down the road that they always go to, and they feel like they walk in the door and immediately their coffee order is just on its way because the barista knows what they want. Whatever it may be, people have that local lifestyle that they love. They love living where they live for a reason. Generally speaking, if people can afford to live not in Point Piper or Bondi or anything like that, not to the upper extremities, but if they have found the place, they don't like to get pushed out, and that's completely fair. So for economists and I guess the government to be playing this balancing game with the entire legislation and property and everything like that, because absolutely, it makes sense. People clearly need a place to live, especially if you're going to be having 20% growth in 17 years, is I guess what they were saying, but at the same time, Australia really is quite a non-diverse economy. It's held together with mining and real estate. That's basically the two things that hold and make the world go around in this country. And so if you start tampering with that, it would be interesting, and people are very scared to see what happens with it. You don't want to be upsetting these people, and you can't afford to be upsetting those people in some way, and you'll never win. But some people have to be winning more than they are now, because it clearly is unsustainable. You can't just be having people just move and move and move and move and move and move and move unless you just build an entire another city. But then what's the cost of that? Really, like not even just monetary costs, but what's the cost of moving everyone out to a different place and just splitting up families, splitting up cultures, splitting up whatever it may be, just because you can't get a good grip on what you really need to do 10, 15 years ago, even now, just putting in certain applications just to be trying to get a grasp on this entire worldwide problem, and maybe then just allowing the rest of the world to be having the warning and then also having a bit of a showcase of what you should be doing.